All right, picture this. You just hit a major milestone. Something really big. Something your best friend literally told you that you could do. They cheered you on toward it and said they absolutely couldn't wait to celebrate. And then, when you finally told them, you saw it. Just a tiny flicker in their expression. A smile that took, I don't know, maybe just a half second too long to arrive. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to unpack the hidden psychology behind one of the most confusing interpersonal dynamics we humans experience. Because in that half-second delay, the massive win you came to share quietly turned into something else entirely. A very small, very specific kind of ache. You're standing right in front of someone who is supposed to be in your corner, and the win in your hands feels like it's shrinking by the second.
So you might be wondering, why on earth do our biggest wins sometimes feel like betrayals? Look, people might tell you to just chalk it up to jealousy, but honestly, that word doesn't really fix anything, does it? Especially when this is coming from someone you've known your entire life. You share something amazing, and the response comes back wrapped in these little passive phrases like, "Oh wow, must be nice," or "Yeah, but you had a lot of help, right?" Technically, sure, there's a congratulations hidden in there somewhere. You couldn't point to a single sentence and prove in a court of law that they're being mean. But by the time the conversation wraps up, the thing you walked in so proud of feels completely deflated. They didn't attack it. They just slowly let the air out of it while smiling right to your face. To really understand why our closest allies do this, we have to look a bit deeper.
Section 1. The Psychological Reveal. The Science of the Ache.
Okay, so what's actually happening underneath this subtle deflation isn't conscious cruelty at all. It's something much, much quieter. Decades ago, a psychologist named Leon Festinger figured this out with what he called social comparison theory. Now, I know the name sounds a bit clinical, but it actually gives us a brilliant scientific framework for exactly what's going on in these confusing moments. Festinger realized something fascinating. Humans don't measure how well they're doing against some universal fixed standard. We just don't. Instead, we measure ourselves against the people closest to us. We're talking about your siblings, your oldest friends, the kid you grew up next door to.
Think of those close people as a ruler. And here's the kicker. When you grow, that ruler moves, whether they want it to or not. Your sudden win stops being just your win. It powerfully, instantly highlights what they haven't achieved. It becomes this inescapable, glowing neon sign pointing right at their own plateau. By succeeding, you are suddenly breaking the established measurement of success in your shared ecosystem.
Let's break down exactly how this plays out in real time. Step 1, you share a win. Instantly, step 2, the gap between you and them widens. Because that gap feels deeply uncomfortable, we hit step 3. Their nervous system reacts incredibly fast, literally trying to shrink what you said before they've even finished smiling. Why? Because, and this brings us to step 4, if your win is smaller, the gap is smaller. And if the gap is smaller, they can finally feel relief. It's absolutely crucial to get this. Those small dismissals aren't attacks on you. They're just someone desperately trying to feel okay standing in a room with you. It's a subconscious split-second self-defense mechanism.
Section 2. Rewriting your story. The tactics of the ego.
So there's a specific behavior that almost looks like support, which makes it incredibly tricky to catch. Let's look at the two sides of the story. On one hand, you have the actual painful reality of your success. The late nights, the sacrifices, the really hard decisions. But then, there's the story they start quietly spreading. Suddenly, according to them, you just got lucky. The timing was perfect, you knew the right people. Notice that nobody is saying your success didn't happen. They're just quietly rewriting how it happened. You might not even catch it until you overhear them telling the story to someone else. And boom, all your blood, sweat, and tears have been edited out, completely replaced by a nice, safe, easy narrative about luck.
The psychology here is fascinating because luck is safe. Think about it. If your success was earned through sheer effort, that means it was possible. And if it was possible for you, well, it means they could have earned it too, but they didn't. Acknowledging your effort means admitting that they could have made the exact same choices but simply chose not to. For a lot of people, sitting with that truth is just an unbearable pill to swallow. Luck, on the other hand, luck is just something that happens to people. It demands nothing of them. So their brain quietly trades your effort for luck just to protect their own ego.
Now, if you ever find yourself in this situation, I need you to hear this. Stop trying to correct the record. It's not going to work. You cannot argue someone out of a story that is literally holding them together. You might want to sit there and list out every single sacrifice you made, but it won't move the needle an inch. This isn't some deliberate, malicious lie they're telling to hurt you. It's a psychological shield. The version of the story where you just got lucky, that's the version that lets them sleep at night.
The argument was actually never about the facts of your success. It was always about what they desperately needed to believe so they could feel safe. But what happens when that gap gets too wide to just explain away with a story about luck?
Section 3, the silent fade, when the gap is too big. Sometimes rewriting the story just isn't quite enough to protect them. And when that happens, you'll start to see this brutal progression of ghosting play out. It starts super subtly. Texts that used to take minutes to get a reply, suddenly they're taking days. Then, the phone calls start to dwindle and get much shorter. Pretty soon, they become almost impossible to pin down for plans. And finally, when you share your really good news, you're met with near-complete silence. Just a flat, one-word reply before the conversation awkwardly shifts. The craziest part is, technically, nothing they did is quote-unquote wrong, which makes it almost impossible to call out. But this gradual fade, it is agonizing.
And the truly tragic cost of this fade lands right on your shoulders. You end up continuously auditing yourself for a crime that literally doesn't exist. You'll waste years of your life scrolling back through old text messages, analyzing your tone, wondering what on earth you did wrong to make them pull away like that. You start preemptively softening yourself, just in case you were somehow being too much. But actually, scratch that. There was never a moment you were too much. You did absolutely nothing wrong. I really want you to take this insight to heart. Being close to you is just starting to cost them something emotionally. Every single time they're in the same room as you, they are forced to feel that painful gap we talked about earlier. So, they manage it the only way they have left, by putting physical and emotional space between you and them. This distance is absolutely not a punishment aimed at you. It is simply their nervous system finding a way to avoid the pain of the gap. It's pure self-preservation.
And then, there's the final sting, the echo chamber. This happens in rooms that you are never in. It's those small, behind-the-back comments. Oh, they've changed, or they really think they're better than us now. Since they couldn't compete with you alone, they start recruiting others to validate their own insecurities. When you finally realize that a whole story about you has been getting passed around for years, it hurts a lot. But you have to recognize it for what it is. Shrinking your wins, rewriting your story, ghosting you, gossiping, they are all just different tactics trying to pull you back down to a place where they can comfortably stand next to you again. So what do we actually do about this?
Section 4. Stop shrinking your wins. The resolution.
Listen, you can never, ever fix this dynamic by making yourself smaller. And let's be honest, you've probably tried, haven't you? We all do. You've shared less, you've waited a few extra days before mentioning your good news, all just to keep the peace. But the emotional cost of that is terrible. Every time you soften your dreams just to manage someone else's fragile ego, you get a little quieter inside. And that is a really heavy price to pay to stay close to someone who simply cannot handle who you've become.
Which brings us to the absolute most powerful takeaway of this entire explainer. Stop pouring yourself into people who can only love a smaller version of you. Read that again. Now that you can see the psychology clearly, now that you know for sure their reaction is about their safety, not your worth, you get to stop trying so hard. Stop softening your wins. Stop sacrificing your massive growth for the comfort of others.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. It is time to redirect all that wasted energy away from those lost relationships and analyzing old text messages. Shift your focus back to your dreams. So, ask yourself, who are you becoming when you finally stop shrinking? Because that is exactly where your energy is needed. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the clarity you need to just keep growing completely unapologetically.